some of these organizations that basically protect against like forest fires and stuff like that, they have satellites that detect when a fire breaks out in a forest, so they
Mhm.
put it out. Well, that same satellite can also detect the muzzle flare of a howitzer, so they can use that satellite information, find out that there's artillery there, and then target it. Basically, draw up a drone strike on an iPad and, like I said, basically target it and attack it right there in real time. That's the kind of stuff that you can do with AI, or what they've called, some people call it algorithmic warfare.
Mhm.
And that's just one of the things.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Angel Investment Research Podcast. I'm Jeff Siegel, filling in for the great and powerful Jason Freert. And with me today is Jason Simpkins. Jason, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, it's good to be here.
You are the guy that we go to talk about all things war, defense stocks, and obviously, it sounds crass to say this, but this is a good time for readers of your newsletter. Real quick, do you just want to tell us a little bit about what it is that you follow and how it pertains to what's going on right now uh, in Israel?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, like you said, I mean, I've been following defense investing for now going on 10 years. This has just kind of been my beat. And most recently through Secret Stock Files, which is my trading service, where we focus on a lot of technology that's coming out of the government, whether it's like military labs or think tanks. There's always technology that the government's working on to try to get an edge over its global competitors, near peer competitors. That technology often goes mainstream, and when it does, it tends to make a lot of money for investors and stakeholders. So for me, yeah, like, and I kind of, I think I get what you're saying about how it's like it does sound kind of crass. I know there's a lot of
Right.
people out there, like I see it all the time online, where they're like, "Oh, look at these defense companies; their stocks going up when all this horrible stuff has happened." But I mean, my point of view on that kind of stuff has always been, one, it's always a good time to invest in defense stocks. I mean, even at peacetime is probably even the better time, because you want to prepare for times like this. And the
Mhm.
reality is that we can't really change how chaotic or violent the world is. All you can really do is prepare for it as an investor and a person. Take the necessary steps to ensure that, when the market's tanking because some horrible global event has come about, that you're in the stocks that are at least holding water, if not going up themselves. And so, you know, I don't think anybody who was invested in Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or General Dynamics or any of these companies that we'll probably talk about today,
Mhm.
felt bad about their portfolio or those stocks going up double digits over the past month when all this horrible stuff was happening.
Right. Well, and even like you said, even in times of peace, these aren't bad stocks to own. It's not like Raytheon's going to go out of business, because
Right.
we have a few months where it's relatively peaceful. I mean,
That's
it's an observation of truth, right? There's always conflict in the world.
that's always been the thing, and it's something where, like, in a way, I'm really kind of conservative as an investor, just because I look at defense contractors and I go, well, there's the one thing our government can always agree to fund. Like, generally speaking, Congress isn't going to agree on much. I mean, I was just reading the news today and they're already talking about government shutdowns again. They're having all these problems. Just getting anything through Congress is just like this massive undertaking. But Republicans and Democrats always seem to kind of find common ground on defense and funding the Pentagon. We saw it recently with these defense budgets. The most recent one, $858 billion. I was just talking to one of my friends about it. I was like, it wasn't too long ago, just a couple years ago, where I was writing about the defense budget. And it was like 600 billion. Now here we are at 858, and I keep telling people, by the time we get to the next presidential administration, whoever it is, whether it's Biden or Trump or some, you know, other
Savior.
candidate that comes out of there, who knows? But we're going to hit $1 trillion defense budget in the next probably presidential term.
Mhm.
It won't happen next year because, like I said, Congress, even as part of that debt ceiling, I think they capped defense increases at about 1%. 1% of $858 billion is still going to be a lot of money. That's still going to be a significant increase, just not quite the 3 or 4% increase we've been used to seeing these past couple of years. But truly, you look around the world, and again, like this recent and really, yeah, tragic on events unfolding in Gaza and Israel. But before that, we had Ukraine, and
Mhm.
everyone kind of gets the sense that a crisis in the Pacific with China and Taiwan is very likely around the corner. We've seen other areas in terms of the Middle East, like Iran, Syria, Yemen with Saudi Arabia. Like, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of chaos around there, and it tends to get worse. This is just kind of the new normal, is really what it is. And so you don't really have to go far to justify those defense spending increases the way you would if the world was totally peaceful and everyone's singing kumbaya and everything's
Right.
great. I think people are kind of aware now, very acutely aware, that globally there's countries, the United States and the Western powers are really at odds with this other group of countries in Russia, China, Iran, and anybody else kind of throwing in with them.
Mhm.
So it's a good place to be. It's a safe place to be in a world where safety is at a premium.
Well, it's interesting you say too, you're talking about how they put caps on how much they can spend. We're talking about the government, but it's always interesting to me. Anytime there's a conflict that heats up or a war that heats up, somehow we always find the money. You know, I mean, it's kind of like, oh, well, we're going to cap it. Well, okay. I mean, you can say that now, but who's going to say what's going to happen 6 months from now? And all of a sudden, we need more money for this country or that country. So, yeah, I mean, it's again, it's sad to say, but there are always funds available for war. It's
Yeah,
just
well, I
again
would also
observation.
point out that the reason we've had, and again, in a historical sense, over the past basically almost 100 years, going back basically the end of World War II, where we haven't really had much great power conflict, that's largely because the United States has been in charge, that we've been this lone superpower, and we've been able to influence the world order in such a way that, whether it's the UN or other kind of like diplomatic efforts, we've managed to keep things suppressed. There hasn't been, this war between Russia and Ukraine is the biggest war Europe's seen since the end of World War II. So that's a pretty good track record that we went that long. But again, where did that stability come from? It came from America's dominance. It came from America's ability to back up its policy, its foreign policy, its global policy with a tremendously capable military. So, peace through strength is kind of like the slogan, but it is appropriate in that way. I mean, if you want to keep things in order, somebody has to have the guns. Somebody's got to be there saying, okay, we're not going to allow this, whether it's a genocide or an invasion of a neighbor or anything like that. There has to be some
Mhm.
enforcement behind it. It can't just be strong words.
Yeah, but I would, I mean, and I agree with you 100%. But to add to that, our military power is it varies in terms of where we choose to show it off, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we you can look at the invasion of Ukraine and say, okay, we're here, we need to defend Ukraine, but how many thousands of people have been murdered in Sudan, and we're not putting boots on the ground down there. And I think and again, this is a very crass statement to make, but it's true. There are reasons far beyond saving the Ukrainians that we are actively in Ukraine, and there are reasons that why we're active in Israel. It has nothing to do with protecting lives necessarily, at least in my
Yeah,
opinion.
absolutely. That's 100% true. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I consider myself a relatively patriotic person, but I wouldn't go around saying America's some kind of superhero flying around the
Right.
earth, just doing God's work, just protecting, just a consummate do-gooder. We've made our share of mistakes. There is no
Sure.
doubt about that. I mean, and we've seen that, and we're seeing mistakes made now, even by our allies. It's, you can get carried away sometimes. yeah, you get into these issues globally where sometimes there's not an easy answer. Sometimes America screws up, uh, and but at the end of the day, is the world better off with or without America's leadership? And I think
Mhm.
most people would agree that, while not perfect and certainly flawed, and while America has certainly been guilty of acting in, self-interestedly and, when someone would call it imperialistly, like those are all fair arguments. But at the same
Right.
time, are we ultimately, as a global society, better off through the promotion of democracy and safeguarding, the Western way of life? I would say yes.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, we could have a 3-hour
All
conversation
day, yeah,
about
we
this.
could be here
I
all
don't
day
wanna
talking. I
bore
love this
people,
shit.
I do too. I love it too, because when you drill down into it and you can start seeing the mechanisms that are in place in terms of the government and why we choose to go certain places and what we get out of it and what we don't. It's a fascinating discussion, but
Yeah.
obviously people could care less about what I think about Sudan and Ukraine, and really we want to know about making money. I mean, that's why we're here. And I think we will get into that one set. We're going to lead into that. But one thing I did want to ask you, and I think this is completely relevant to how you're positioning things as an investor in Israel. I suppose my question is this going to spread? Because honestly, by now I figured that it would have already happened. There are a lot of countries in the Middle East that are very enthusiastic about ending Israel, but I haven't seen much evidence that these other countries hostile towards Israel are going to do much more than funding Hamas and Hezbollah. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, I think for one thing, it already is spreading. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I can tell you there have been 40 drone and rocket attacks against the U.S. forces over the past 3 weeks. Those are coming from those Iranian-backed groups in Syria and in Iraq that have moved in since Iraq since we invaded it. And then speaking of flawed American policy,
Right.
like
Let's not go back down
so
that rabbit hole.
yeah, but so they've been attacking. Just this morning, overnight, a drone flew into a barracks at a U.S. base in Iraq, and thank God it didn't actually explode. It was laden with explosives. They just failed to detonate. So this drone crashed into a barracks with all these U.S. troops. Now, had
Hmm.
that drone done what it was supposed to do, and we were sitting here talking about a dozen or so dead American soldiers now dead at the hands of an Iranian proxy group, I think that'd be a huge problem. And again, thankfully we aren't there right now, but the unfortunate truth is that this conflict with Israel and Gaza, the Palestinians, either one, West Bank too, they're gearing up for this to be. They're going to be there for the long haul. I mean, Israel, at least the last I saw, they were talking about taking basically indefinite ownership over the security in the Gaza Strip, which is just another way of saying we're really going to fully occupy it.
Hmm.
And everyone I've talked to in the government, in the military, has told me the same thing, that Israel is really determined to make sure that this just never happens again. That this is just the last we're ever going to hear from Hamas or anything else, that they're just going to, just basically turn it into a parking lot, that they're going to, take over, that they're going to stay there. But once you have that and you have that kind of military occupation, we've seen already the amount of force, amount of indiscriminate force that's been used to maintain that, then you
Hmm.
start to instigate the other countries in the Arab speaking world. And it's that's going to be there. And so long as Israel is pursuing this path, which it's going to, and again indefinitely, we're going to have these problems with these Iranian-backed militias and other, even independent groups or radical leaders
Hmm.
that are going to want retribution of their own, and they're going to want to, try to destroy Israel. They're going to want to get the United States out of the Middle East. It's the same thing that goes back decades and decades and decades now, where we've been having this the whole root of 9/11 with terrorist attacks in the United States and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's gonna we're just kind of there now. It's resurfaced. For a while it had kind of quieted down, or at least so it seemed. It seemed like there was even a point where this year seemed like Israel was going to have this real rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, where Saudi Arabia was going to formally acknowledge them as a state, and that they were going to make this headway, and that we were kind of forming this U.S. backed kind of coalition with Saudi Arabia and Israel and the United States to balance out Iran and some of the other kind of unsavory characters and bad actors in that region. Well, now
Mhm.
that's out the window. Now Israel is back, looking like a huge target, and we're getting attacks on U.S. forces again. So hopefully, that we do a good job of kind of shooting some of that stuff down. But like it's happening every day. Also, last night they shot down some like rebels in Yemen that are also back. They're fighting a proxy war with Saudi Arabia in Yemen. So they have this group in Yemen. They shot down a U.S. Reaper drone off the coast, unmanned vehicle, no big deal. But like I said, they blow up a barracks. And the US did respond. It was actually twice now we've conducted bombing runs. We blew up two warehouses, one on October 26th and one either yesterday or early this morning. Both these warehouses had munitions, those guns or those rockets and drones that were being used to attack US assets. We bombed them. We bombed two of them. They were linked to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So we've now conducted two bombing runs in the past 3 weeks in retaliation to ongoing harassment and attacks of U.S. assets.
Yeah, I don't see how this is not going to continue to spread. I just there's no there in my mind the way you're talking about this too. This is a long game they're playing. If Israel goes in and says, "Oh, we're going to take complete control over Gaza and we're going to wipe out Hamas," there's always going to be factions coming out to replace Hamas. I mean, that's the history of the world. You have two people fighting or two groups fighting, one winner, one loser, but the loser always has like apologists or supporters that come through and they kind of keep it going. And I kind of also wonder, how much the U.S. actually wants to be involved in this. I don't think the voters do, but I think from a security standpoint, the government probably does. Am I wrong to assume that?
I'm not really sure. I would imagine throughout the U.S. government, there's probably differing opinion on that. I'm sure because, like, in every country you have hardliners and hawks and people who are more inclined to go the diplomatic route.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know. I don't think honestly, if like that the Biden administration really wanted this because for them it's been a political bomb. It's been terrible for them because they're in a lose lose situation because they back Israel and everyone goes, well, now you're backing Israel's genocide of the Palestinians, and it's like,
Right.
okay, well, we don't want to do that. What would you do? Not back Israel? And then you have all of like the Israel lobby and the Jewish people, I think rightfully going, you're not going to support us here after this horrible terrorist attack, and when 9/11 happened to you guys, we had your back. You're not going to have ours. You're not going to look after like our interests. Like we've been your strongest ally in the region. We're on the front line here, and you're going to take their side down. So there's no right side to take. You're just kind of put in this position where you're like you're screwed either way. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
And I don't know how much the American voting public is going to penalize the Biden administration for that. But that's for them. It's probably a political headache more than anything else. Now,
Oh,
again, if we
yeah.
talk about the interests, or in Washington D.C. or the Beltway interests at a very high level, which are often again you get these defense contractors, the national security apparatus, the defense apparatus. A lot of that stuff's intertwined. Are they looking at their bank accounts and at their share prices and going, "Hey, this is good for business"? I'm sure there's some of that kind of cynical idea, notion of profiteering, as there always
Mhm.
is in any kind of war.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be a listen. I don't really consider myself a conspiracy theorist. I have not done a deep dive into any of this stuff. I mean, I know probably about as much as any regular person, perusing the internet to find out what's going on in Israel. Um, but it would not surprise me if years from now we find out that this was all done on purpose, and maybe Netanyahu knew this was happening and it was a great way for him to keep power. There's a lot of ways you could spin this, but the bottom line is no matter what the reason was, it's now underway. And I think I just read, I have to double check the numbers here, but Yeah, I read the death count in Gaza is now likely a lot higher than 10,000, which what they had
Mhm.
reported. Not that 10,000 is a small number,
Right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but this is clearly becoming way worse, I think, than some early estimates suggested. It is, and I did want to ask you about this. It is my understanding that Israel was embedding AI into its lethal operations, basically to select targets for airstrikes and
Yeah.
organize logistics. It's actually, I think it's actually pretty interesting. Again, not to sound crass, but this AI system uses data about military approved targets to calculate what munition loads and prioritize and assign targets to aircraft and drones. Or drones. My question here is, how effective really is this AI strategy? Is it working?
It's extremely effective, and it is definitely, it's absolutely, it's necessary to talk about. It's more than appropriate to talk about, because what we're talking about now is just kind of the future of war and what that war is going to look like. And yeah, so Israel definitely uses AI. They've been, they have some, like I said, they have some tremendous research labs and government facilities of their own that have been working on this stuff, some of the brightest minds out there. And they use AI for a lot of the things you said. A lot of it's used for, targeting, for identifying, targets. We're finding where things is, like with Hamas in particular. A big thing is their underground tunnel network.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that's what they use to effectively hide from these bombing runs. It's what they use to sneak in and out of the Gaza Strip. It's this was obviously very long and sophisticated network of tunnels. So like Israel's been using AI to map that out. AI is also being used in Ukraine. They were using it, obviously, I mean, for because they're actual war fighting situations. And so like what they would do basically is you have all these satellites up in the sky, and they're commercial satellites. Airline companies have them for like weather and climate and stuff like that, or companies like Maxar put them up just to sell the data.
Okay.
There's communication satellites, all that kind of stuff. So you have all this tremendous pool of satellite data. But then what do? Do you have a person sit in a room and go frame by frame and like zoom in and out and look at all these different feeds and try to match everything up and figure out what's what? No. You have AI do that now. You have AI collate all this information, go through it, synthesize it all, compare all the videos, like from all the different angles, and create these very accurate, almost real time maps. And that is how Ukraine was effectively attacking and fending off Russian artillery, because they could see, for instance, like there's some of these organizations that basically protect against like forest fires and stuff like that. They have satellites that detect when a fire breaks out in a forest, so they go
Mhm.
put it out. Well, that same satellite can also detect the muzzle flare of a howitzer, so they can use that satellite information, find out that there's artillery there, and then target it. Basically, draw up a drone strike on an iPad, and like I said, basically target it and attack it right there in real time. That's the kind of stuff that you can do with AI, or what some people call it algorithmic warfare.
Mhm.
And that's just one of the things. Like you said, the terms of possibilities for things like supply lines, troop allocation, just keeping track of all. You have all this data, and especially the military, they have so much data, they have so much information, that it's a struggle to make sense of it all. That you have this mountain, and it's like, I guess you can't just comb through it and get a very clear, actionable idea of what to do. Whereas AI can give you exactly that. It can go through all this data. It can go through different kind of spheres of data and add two and two together and tell you the answer is four. So, like I said, AI is absolutely huge, and it's a tremendous, and it's just getting started there. That this is just the very beginning. I've been talking about like AI pilots. And we've been talking about, like, in a report I did of Project Wingman, where they have drones that are going to basically be semi-autonomous or autonomous, flying alongside manned fighter jets. And
Mhm.
pretty soon they're going to take over the whole fleet, because why would you risk the life of a pilot?
Yeah.
And why also would you put a pilot in there when they're not physically capable of operating like an F-35 to its fullest capability, whereas a computer can? and so they're also, obviously cheaper. So there's all of that. It's like I said, it's an entire ecosystem now of information coordination and machine learning, and even ultimately combat. AI combat is where it's going to ultimately go.
It's actually fascinating. So, I don't really cover this space, but as you know, I cover electric vehicles, and I've written a little bit about autonomous vehicles and how, if you look at the data, at some point it's going to be there would make no sense for anyone to drive because it's going to be safer. These vehicles using AI are just going to be able to drive better than people, and they'll be more efficient in terms of fuel usage. It makes even more sense from a military aspect because not only, like you said, a computer is going to be able to operate that aircraft a lot more efficiently than a human, and also probably without error.
Mhm.
But also when we're talking about conflicts and war, um, you could actually make the argument that this would not completely eliminate, but help reduce the number of civilian deaths because by utilizing AI, we can hone in on the areas specifically to target, like you said, where they're holding munitions or where certain the enemy is, and you don't have to. Because I think up to this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's always been kind of like, well, we think this is where they are, and then you
Mhm.
send in recon missions and stuff, but it's still kind of a guess. So I wonder if it, I wonder if I'm reaching a bit by saying AI could actually, um, reduce the number of civilian deaths during wartime. What do you think about
Well,
that?
yeah, it could, because it certainly improves accuracy. It improves your level of intelligence. I mean, to your point there about like, oh, okay, well, we think they're there. Yeah, like there's only so many ways you're going to get that kind of intelligence for like a prospective target, right? You might have satellite imagery, but also obviously a lot of countries and militaries are aware of that, and they're good at disguising their forces and their assets so that you can't just see it on a satellite. So for that, you need human intelligence. That's where the whole spy game comes in. That's where you have people on the ground that you have, within an enemy organization, or that are just hiding out in plain sight, and they can relay to you like, okay, this guy just went into this building, and we gotta bomb it now. But again, that intelligence is only as good as the human providing it,
Okay.
which is not always accurate. There could also be a delay there as that information works its way up the chain of command, and how quickly it gets to a person who would issue any kind of order or actionable attack on it. And so again, yeah, that's where you would have, AI could streamline and improve that, and it would also help with things like friendly fire. Like you get into the fog of war and combat, and it can just be really difficult. It can be difficult to see. It can be difficult to track, even with sophisticated equipment that we have. We still have friendly fire incidents. It happens all the time.
Mm.
And AI would certainly cut down on that. And then just a matter of having, like I said, robots, either fully autonomous or remotely controlled, semi-autonomous. You're sending your robots to fight the other guy's robots. That's kind of the best case scenario, where like you're keeping the humans further and further removed from the battlefield.
Yeah. Yeah. So, are there any? Because you talked a bit about drones, and there's been kind of like this evolution of drones, particularly in the military. Can you tell us a little bit about what you would consider the most advanced drones that are being used today for military applications?
The most advanced ones are the wingman drones. They call them companion craft, and so, like I said, they can fly alongside a manned fighter. They can fly out in front of it. They can probe enemy defenses. They can assist in that targeting. They can find things to hit. They can find threats. They can draw fire. They can deploy their own ordnance. They can use jamming equipment to shut down enemy air defense systems so that man fighters can come in and complete their bombing run. And they could pretty much do it all. I think the only thing that's kind of really stopping them ultimately from, again, taking over pretty much the entire Air Force is just the fact that it's not quite there yet. We haven't quite made that leap to being like, okay, well, we're going to have a fully autonomous Air Force. But when they put these things, and they have put these like AI piloted drones up against manned fighters, and the drones win every time. It's
Mm.
not even close because like I said, there's no sensor to shooter timeline. There's no double checking. There's no taking any minute to pause or to think about it. There's no hesitation. It's just as soon as it detects the threat, it's neutralized almost instantly. And again, like talk about these machines, like an F-35 or whatever, these things can fly, they generate enough gravitational force that would cause a human to pass out. Like a human pilot, if you're pulling like 5 Gs, you're probably going to black out within a few minutes. But these things are capable of going twice that speed. So in that sense, the human pilot's holding it back. And so those right now are the most sophisticated ones, but we're going to get to a point where everybody has companions. I'm already starting to see it. They just a company that I follow just deployed like a little mini tank. It's like got 6 wheels, and it just goes with infantry troops so that they can send it out, and it has a machine gun on it, and they can send it out and it can conduct reconnaissance and do like radar work and give them a lay of the land and defend itself if necessary with the machine gun it has on it, and then report there, at very least give that information back to the infantry group so that they can stay out of harm's way.
Oh, okay.
And you're going to see that expand further because we're also seeing, like in Ukraine, we've already seen seaborne drones. For the most part, those have been on the surface. They're like little, like basically remote controlled speedboats packed with explosives that they're ramming into the Russian fleet. And that's been very effective for them. But it's going to get to a point where all of our seaborne vessels, whether they're carrier groups or battleships or patrol boats, submarines, are going to have their own companion aircraft that can shield them, that can expand their radius of like enemy detection and threat detection, that can search for mines. The Navy has a mine hunting drone. It's called the Sea Hunter, and it just goes around the ocean looking for underwater mines, and that's its only job. So there's some really really sophisticated ones out there, and it's only gonna go up from there.
Would that also be relevant for commercial applications like fishing boats?
Oh
Or
yeah,
because I'm thinking about the pirates in certain parts of the world that attack the oil, the tankers or the fishing boats. Will there ever be a situation where, like, let's say you have an oil tanker that has a companion drone flying next to it, or is that just for military?
sure. Well, you can. It's the same technology. You can just demilitarize it, which is what happens with kind of a lot of military technology.
Sure.
You could just take the gun off of it, and it can still be a very useful asset. And I know in like the deep water drilling, or when it comes to like oil pipelines underwater, they use drones to repair them and inspect them. I've seen drones being used now, I mean, unmanned vehicles, really almost basically just as trucking, leader follower technology, where you have a truck driver with cargo at the front of a convoy and then a bunch of self driving trucks behind it hauling goods. I think in that case it was beets from a beet farm because they didn't have enough licensed truck drivers to ferry the beets from the extraction point from the farm to the processing facility because you need like a specially licensed, like a class C truck license or whatever to do that. They're having a hard time with the staffing shortages, and so they had these robots haul the beets to the processing facility.
Mhm.
You see it kind of creeping into a lot of like different commercial areas, industrial areas, doing jobs that are dangerous for humans, warehouse work, where they can lift these giant pallets and move them rather than have somebody on
Mhm.
a forklift or whatever. Like I said, just kind of increasing the safety. And what's really been cool about that too, it's that you'd think like, oh, well, it's taking jobs, but it's not. It's actually just giving people, it's taking those same people that be doing those dangerous tasks and then putting them in charge of a robot to take the liability out of it. So
Mhm.
they all get to keep their jobs, but they actually just get a better job because now instead of doing that physical manual labor and putting your body at risk, you're just controlling a robot and doing it that
Well, I mean, that's throughout history.
way.
Anytime a new technology comes along, the first response is it's going to put all these people out of work. I mean, I've read quite a bit about the dawn of internal combustion and how all these horse and buggy companies were just like, we're going to lose all these jobs. And
Right.
but then Ford was saying, listen, we're going to be able to eventually be able to move medicine and food and like all these amazing. It's going to make the world a better place. And that you're always going to have a kind of a, and it's not to sound rude, but kind of a, like a Luddite mentality where it's just like anything that serves as progress is seen as a threat to the current way of life. And maybe it is, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
definitely people can say, well, it's all these all these jobs at the warehouse are going to be gone, and it's just, but but yeah, I mean, but think of all the things that are going to happen in progress, like you said, and better jobs are going to be, the results of that.
Right.
That's
I mean,
another
it goes back
conversation for
to,
another day, but
well, yeah, but
they're
it's
relevant.
basically like John Henry, the steel driving man. It's like, look,
Yeah.
it's great that you are really married to the idea of nailing railroad spikes in the hot desert sun, but we got a steam
Right.
powered thing that can do this now. And like, was America any worse off for not having railroad spike drivers? No, we found other jobs for them. These other things do
Right.
open up. The efficiency creates other opportunities.
Well, a lot of those early railroads were built by slaves anyway, from
That's right. Yeah.
China primarily.
Yes.
So it's like
Yeah.
kind of a double win right there. Well, the company you were just talking about, that they've written about, is that public? Is that a public company?
Yes.
Okay. And is there, if you is where can, because I'm assuming some people watching this right now are probably going to want to read about it.
Yeah. So there's a couple one. We could definitely put the Project Wingman one down in the comment
Okay.
section, the report on that, and you get access to that there. And but like the way to get all the information is going to be to sign up for secret stockpiles. Like
Right.
there are other companies out there that I don't mind talking about. But for those ones, we're charging people money
Of
for
course.
them.
Yeah.
I can't.
Well, listen, I mean, that's the thing, Jason. It's
Yeah.
like, a lot of the companies that you recommended them after doing your own intel before anybody else was paying attention to them. And that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of subscribing to the newsletter, because it gives you an opportunity, as Brian always says, our publisher, get to the good grass first.
Mhm.
You've recommended many of these companies before they kind of got into the public eye. So it makes complete sense. But yeah, so we'll make sure to put a link below so people can read more about what you're looking at right now. In terms of one last question, I want to ask you. You've kind of been on the forefront of the future of defense. I would call it. And this is years ago. You were talking about some of these drones before anybody else was talking about them. You were talking about AI before anyone even outside the government, except for you and a couple of other analysts, even knew existed. Um, Moving forward, what's next?
Uh, I mean, those are the two big ones. Like basically, we've seen that in Ukraine. We've seen it in now Israel. That the economy of scale for drones is so significant in that they only cost. I mean, they can cost anywhere from $20 to $50 up to 5 million or 10 or 15 million, depending on how sophisticated a drone you want to make. But they can all
Mhm.
be deployed to the same end of destroying a $70 million fighter jet, or taking out like I said, a troop position or an artillery position or anything like that. AI, like we talked about, is absolutely the future of warfare, and I think basically combining these two things. Once the robots get smarter and more capable, then their role in warfare is only going to increase. And I think aside from that, you would also be looking at things both in cyberspace in terms of like hacking and attacks like that. I've been told like the main goal, what the U.S. military ideally wants to develop, is basically an ability to hack into China or Russia, any opponent's like defense, and create a mirage and basically show them things that aren't there, and hide things and corrupt their intelligence to such a point that they might even for a period think that they've scored a tremendous victory when in fact their forces are getting obliterated. And then commensurate with that is this race into space, which is also happening just a little bit more slowly, but it actually goes against treaties that were signed. Back in the 90s, people said, "Hey, we're not going to weaponize space," but they're doing it. China's
Yeah.
doing it. There's this race now. That's why everybody's suddenly interested in like the moon again, and like, oh, well, we're going to start getting manned missions back to the moon because all this stuff is being militarized because that's the new high ground. The United States,
Mm.
going back to World War II, has always maintained a policy of air superiority. We are going to control the skies because that's the highest ground. And if we're up there and you're down there, we're going to win. And so now the whole thing is like, well, what if, we're China or whatever, we're in low Earth orbit, or, we're up here. And then, we're attacking your satellites. And China's tested weapons like that, satellite killers, either missiles, stuff like that, or basically kind of like zombie satellites that are just hanging out there waiting to be activated and go attack. Russia has Gremlin satellites that it aims to deploy that can go and attack other satellites that we have up there. Because once you get into that technology battle, if you are using AI, if you are using drones, what matters is obviously communication. It's the same thing. It would be like if
Right.
someone shut down the internet. That's been the thing for Ukraine, where there was like that famous thing with like Elon Musk didn't activate Starlink so that they could conduct an attack on Crimea. So it just stopped them dead in their tracks. Like otherwise they could have, but with no internet you can't. And so once you start to get up there, it's like, okay, well, if we can shut down the enemy's entire military by taking out their satellites, taking out their visibility, taking out their ability to effectively communicate, taking out their ability to control the situation, command and control, then that's the way to win. So that's kind of really where it's all headed to.
It seems like there's no shortage of opportunities here.
No, there's not.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to discuss this with us. I mean, I know a lot of people are watching this right now that don't really know a whole lot about the direction in which we're going in terms of, military superiority and using AI and drones. And as you mentioned, what's going on, in space, which is actually quite fascinating. A lot of this is news to me. I read your letter, but I like to hear directly from you because every now and then you like drop a little tidbit of information that you haven't written about yet. So always good to watch your videos. And if you're watching, feel free to click the link below and learn more about what Jason's following. And thanks again, Jason. I hope you have a great
Yeah,
day.
thanks a lot. Appreciate the chat. Yeah, later.